Okay, three, two, one. Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It is Chris, joined by Milton and Ben for Outer Rim Transmission, episode 136, our friendly local neighborhood Star Wars podcast. Hey, we got some big news. This is one of those shows that we always look forward to recording and talking about because we have a couple big announcements, but one massive announcement. We're getting all into the announcement of the Mandalorian and Grogu film, which is shooting this year. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into the confirmation of Ahsoka Season 2, more High Republic adventures, so much stuff going on. Milton, it's good to have you back in the new year, man. How you been?
I'm good. It's glad to be back. 2024 is here. Can't believe it. But yeah, glad to talk some Star Wars. Hopefully, this year is a good year for Star Wars in the sense of movies, TV shows, whatnot. So I'm looking forward to what Lucasfilm and Disney can bring to the table this year.
Oh yeah, we got Bad Batch, Acolyte. We have other things down the pipe. Skeleton Crew, Tales of the Jedi, and maybe even some more surprises along the way. Ben, how's it going?
Good, and just chilling. Just been working out, back on the grind. Like I said before, after that back injury I had, it was nice to actually be back to working out all week. So it was, it's just a relief finally getting back in the actual swing of things. And then other than that, really, just kind of the norm. Really, just chilling, hanging out. You know, I've been listening to finishing up the first duology book from the Thrawn series. I think I only have like 2 hours left in that, so I'm getting really close to finishing that up. That's been a very good book so far. And yeah, I mean, other than that, like just been kind of a normal week. Nothing too crazy for like my week in Star Wars outside of our big news stories we're going to talk about tonight, because I feel like for probably the most of us, unless you guys have some like unique things, I feel like most likely our week in Star Wars is going to be this news we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, I would say that, but I've also been listening to a Star Wars audiobook. Milton, we talked about this last week, how Spotify premium members now get the audiobooks. I'm like, you know what? Dang it. I'm gonna start listening to Legends more. I have listened to Legends in the past, but what I'm currently going through is the Red Harvest audiobook by Joe Schreiber, written by Joe Schreiber. And it just brought up this type of species in Star Wars that I didn't really think a lot about, and it popped up. And here, I'll show it to everybody that's watching live on the chat. There is this creature called.
Use.
Yeah, no,
Spotify.
you Spotify, and then if you're
Okay.
Amazon Prime member, you get like what, the one Audible a month or something. So if you plan your cards out right, you can
Okay. Maybe that's
actually,
what I was.
yeah.
Because I do have Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think you get one audible book a month, I think, with that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean it's a good deal for Spotify and stuff too for people that use that. But how about you, Milton? Did you have any Star Wars this week?
I actually did. It happened yesterday. I wish I had I wish I had a picture of it, like to show you. At least had it. It's downstairs, but my dad got me a Christmas gift, and he forgot to give it to me during Christmas because we were busy with preparing for my brother's wedding, that type of thing. So he gave it to me today or yesterday. It's he ordered it from Temu, and
Oh.
it was like a clock, like a wooden like clock that was like
Mm-hmm.
carved out of wood, and it
Yeah.
was of the Death Star. And it was like the characters like carved in the wood and the Death. It was pretty cool, man. Like it's a cool, dope type clock,
Mm-hmm.
old school hands. I'll send you guys a
Nice.
picture of it in the group chat. But it was nice seeing that because he knows obviously how much I love Star Wars, and it's him. He's the one that got me into Star Wars. So
Mm-hmm.
for him to get me something that was that kind of cool, it wasn't a major gift. It was kind of like, hey, I know you like Star Wars. I know
Yep.
it's
Yep.
something that's simple to you, but you would appreciate this. So yeah, so he got me a Star Wars like carved wooden clock.
Nice, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that really adds like having like the natural kind of side of collectible things with mixed with Star Wars, like wood, for instance. It's a really cool idea. We're just so used to the normal
yeah,
things of Star Wars as collectibles. You just think of action figures, you think of books and comics, but then something that's like handcrafted like that is like it just brings out the uniqueness. It just makes it something even more special, you know?
right. No, I agree.
All right. So, as Ben was saying, we got a lot to get into tonight. Before we get started, some housekeeping. As always, we go live every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time here on the Starrapter YouTube channel. We are also available to download on any podcast app of your choice. I know Google Podcasts, I'm getting the alerts. That is no longer going to be a thing in April, but will be available on everything else like Spotify and Apple Music. So go ahead and on all those platforms, make sure you go subscribe, comment if you can, hit those like buttons, and let us know what you think about our positive Star Wars podcast. And you could be part of that community if you join us live, such as Brittany Taylor, who is chiming in a chat. Hope the Filoni movie isn't another Imp versus Rebel. What about Grisk slash Abeloth slash Sun versus everyone with Thrawn? Yes, this is probably a topic for its own podcast, but I've always been floating around the
Mhm.
idea of we need something different than normal good guy versus bad guy, white trooper versus ragtag rebels. We've seen that time and time again. So yeah, let's throw in the grist. Let's throw in these crazy things that are gonna, change the status quo because, for better or for worse, that's what really I think hurt the sequel trilogy is it's way too familiar with things you already know.
Well, the thing
Yeah.
is with that, like, I mean, with Brittany's comment there, you know, you have the Grisk potential, like, just because obviously, like, the books and everything. And then you have, the drawback to, or the callback to, I remember we talked about it on a podcast over the summer,
Yep.
but like Dave, there was the one drawing of Dave, for Rebels, the concept art for Rebels, or it might have been Clone Wars. I don't remember which one it was, but it was a concept art Dave drew for one of those two shows where, I mean, it's only one picture, but it's a Yuuzhan Vong scout ship.
Oh
So,
yeah.
obviously, like that sort of thing is on Dave's radar. So, maybe we go and get that sort of thing introduced, and then maybe that could be like what's involved in, like, say, Dave's movie, like for a big hoorah.
Yeah, I think that could be a good way of going about it. Just introduce something here, then make it bigger in some other part of the franchise there. Milton, what are your thoughts on this?
On the Dave Filoni movie coming out.
Yeah, just this question, like just the idea of like, would you like to see something different than a normal Rebel versus Imperial type of archetype of like the
Oh,
conflict, like another kind of enemy?
yeah. We've gotten it. Look at the best things about Star Wars that isn't Jedi versus Sith or Rebels versus Empire or Force or
Mm-hmm.
Resistance or whatnot. You look at Bad Batch, you look at Mandalorian, you look at Tales of the Jedi, you look at Visions. Like they done a good job at telling different types of stories, whether it's different characters, genres, or parts of Star Wars that we aren't familiar seeing. They've done a really good job at telling stories that we all were like, oh my god, we want more of it. So they have the ability to do that. They have the ability to say, hey, let's go away from the tradition of Rebels versus Empire. We got stories about, pockets of
Mm-hmm.
people trying to defend their farms from X, Y, and Z, or we got this is not like those are just as good stories. I mean, even looking at Ahsoka and Tales of the Jedi versus that one Inquisitor.
Yeah.
Yes, it was Jedi. It was Jedi and Sith, but was it really though? She didn't really use a lightsaber except for the Dyson ones, but it wasn't even like we didn't need a big fight. It like just that story leading up was a great story itself. You look at the Bad Batch trying to what was the last couple episodes when they were trying to infiltrate the base? Like that had nothing to do with quote unquote actually like fighting good guys versus bad guys. I forget what their mission was, but that was simple enough. Like I love that storytelling. We got close to troopers. Like we were appreciating stormtrooper or not stormtroopers, but like troopers from that era. So
Mm-hmm.
if they want to give us something that had nothing to do with our main parts of Star Wars, I'm all about it. So yeah, I'm cool with it. As long as it's a strong story, it's consistent, and it's not too over the top where we get kind of lost with it, then I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the best example right now of the High Republic and the idea of the Nile, who are
Yeah.
these punk rocker raiders and we're dealing with it in phase 3. I'm in the middle of reading Defy the Storm, which is coming out in March, but like that whole thing is the Nile have the upper hand. Like we're actually seeing an example of what happens when the Republic kind of sits on its laurels for too long and lets some other random faction just get ahead of them. And they're not infallible. But yeah, we're seeing like, okay, the Nile, maybe they're not the best empire. Once they're in power, are they going to actually be able to hold the power? But they're pretty darn good at making plans to actually take down governments and take down planetary militias. But their whole issue is, oh, they're not the best at actually holding the territory, so to speak. But yeah, great question.
Mhm.
Great question by Brittany Taylor. You could join her in the chat as we always go live and we have fun in the comment section in our conversations and discussions. Out this week, we have 2 comics. We have, let's see, we have The Mandalorian issue number 8. So if you really liked The Mandalorian season 2, then there you go. You got all 8 comics that are now out and available to purchase. We also have Star Wars issue number 42, which might interest you guys actually because it's a Luke Skywalker story and we are getting more out of Luke. He has he's trying to he's learning about a Sith actually between Empire Return of the Jedi. He's trying to cleanse this red kyber crystal. So it's this really kind of strange story where he's going inside the crystal to basically try to turn the crystal. I'm trying to figure out the right terms here. The way to cleanse the dark side out of the crystal is to go into the memory of the crystal, and he ends up into like this kyber crystal belonged to. It looks like an old Republic Sith. So he's in the middle of this 2-part story in the past, in his mind's eye, in the past of when this crystal was belonging to this Sith. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I'm just happy we're getting more Luke Skywalker content. But yeah, we have our discussion, me and Matthew from Ion Cannon. We're over there on the tractor beam on the Star Wars Underworld talking about that and talking about more. We actually talked a bit about today's story with the Mandalorian and Grogu. So I'm going to let you guys do most of the talking on this one because I said a lot on that podcast already. But yeah, I don't think we should wait any longer. Let's dive in. This is the biggest story of the last couple months for sure when it comes to everything with this whole movie. So I'm going to just read straight from StarWars.com here. Let's see. So we have, here we go. The Mandalorian and Grogu are embarking on a new adventure to movie theaters. Directed by John Favreau and produced by Favreau, Kathleen Kennedy, and Dave Filoni, The Mandalorian and Grogu will go into production in 2024. So there you have it. Milton, I'll throw this over to you. What's your first reactions? And to be clear for everybody out there, yes, there was already a Mandalorian movie announced, but that's its own thing still. And this is a brand new movie that they just announced in addition to the other Mandalorian movies. So I'll throw it over to you, Milton. What's your first impressions of of a new Star Wars movie just being announced on a random Tuesday. Are you looking forward to this? Do you think this is a good idea? Obviously, we're gonna break this down pretty heavily, but just first reactions.
Um, I guess so. I guess I'm excited for it because it's. I mean, there hasn't been a Star Wars movie in a while. When was the last one? It's been years,
Well,
right?
this is
It's
and
been
this
what
is the
since?
and to keep in mind too, Milton. This is the first movie of the slate. It says in that article too. So this is the first movie we're
Yeah,
getting in theaters, and it's the first one since 2019.
I'm about to say since was that Rod Skywalker?
Yep.
Yep.
Is that yeah? So like, yes. I mean, look, I think it's time for a new movie. I will say that I do agree
Mm.
that it's time for a new Star Wars movie. It's time for Star Wars to get back into the theaters. We all know this property was started within the silver screen, and that's how we always experienced it until we got the Clone Wars, which again that was a great setup for how TV and eventually was for streaming. So am I excited for this movie? I don't know if I'm excited. Hopefully, it's great. I feel that Mandalorian or that character Grogu fits the streaming platform better because we're so used to seeing him on that particular platform, and it works. Um, so I think I have some reservation about it working on the silver screen just because I felt like those characters got so much depth on the streaming platform compared to what you can get on the big screen. So that's where my reservation and hesitation comes in. However, because it's Dave Filoni, because it's John Favreau, most likely partnering with him and doing
Yep.
all this type of stuff, do I feel confident in what they can do to bring something to the silver screen? Absolutely. However, there is some reservation, there's some hesitation due to what I said. So I'm hopeful, but at the same time, if it fails, which I don't want it to, let's be very clear. If it fails or isn't as successful, or
Yep.
or, or not, wouldn't say fail. If it's not as fleshed out, I'd understand that because you only get about 2 hours and 20 minutes to tell a story. Most likely, you're not going to get 5 to 6 episodes that are about 35 to 45 minutes, sometimes 50 minutes long. That's the biggest thing to me.
Yeah, I think all those sentiments are nice bullet points we're gonna dive into specifically. Just the idea of why movie versus a
Yep.
series. It started off as a series. What's going on here? Anyway, so Ben, what's your first thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I'll give my bird's eye view and then we can like dive into more of the details of all this about this movie. For me, I think it's a good way for starters. It's a good way to get Star Wars back into theaters because in my opinion, it was a really bad calculation for them to begin with to start off. Mind you, this is nothing. I always have to caveat some of my statements so they don't sound too bad. But this is nothing against the sequel trilogy at all. But it's a totally bad PR customer relationship move to start back Star Wars in theaters with the sequel trilogy, not because like, we're some like I'm some anti-sequel person or anything at all. Some of those movies I do enjoy. It's just those movies were so divisive. You have to think about it from a customer relations standpoint. Like
Mm.
even not even from the hardcore fans. Like say our parents. Like if Milton's dad had a bad experience with say Rise of Skywalker, Last Jedi, or Force Awakens, and then you start off Star Wars back in theaters after like a 7-year layoff. You start off Star Wars back in theaters with another sequel era movie. Milton's dad would probably look at that and go, "Nah,
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good." But what could get Milton's dad into theaters? Oh, that Mando show we watched 3 or 4 seasons of, with Mando and Grogu. Yeah, let's come on, Milton, let's go see it. And Milton's brother or whoever else, like, so that sort of thing. That's where, you know, it's good they made this change because, if you're starting with the sequel era, it could start things off poorly potentially. And
Right.
I feel like okay, like if you think about it this way, like so you have this Mando movie and then the Dave Mando movie.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, if you do this and then the Dave movie potentially back to back, that could give the sequel era movie some more time to settle, some
Yep.
more buffer room, some more buffer room. So instead of like say Milton's dad having say a thing in the back of his head thinking, "Nah, I don't really want to see that." Maybe he'll be like, I'll go check it out, versus like it still being in recent memory. So, that's where I think they're actually heading in a good direction with this. And like I
But I
texted,
will say this. No, go ahead. I'll let you
Oh,
finish. I'm sorry.
yeah. I was just about to finish. Like I said, like I texted in our group chat, you can already see the impact of like Dave Filoni having his new position.
Mhm.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'll be devil's advocate on this one, okay?
Yep.
Because this actually should have been part of my Star Wars week too, and I just remembered it. Um, so you talked about sequel trilogy fans versus non-sequel trilogy fans and how that impact would be. Look at
Yep.
look at people who are just introduced into Star Wars.
Hmm.
You know, because their perspective is going to be completely different. Because they may like the Force Awakens, Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker. So they decided to come in with a sequel trilogy character. Like, I mean, they announced the Rey movie, and I know that's coming, and I know there's some controversy about the director making comments or whatnot. Um, but understandably so, like if they want to bring in that realm and say, hey, let's start off with a sequel trilogy film because we know we're coming off of that 5 years ago. Let's keep that fan base, but also bring in new ones who's coming in. Plus, add in the Mando movie because that's currently hot, and the Grogu stuff because that's currently hot. I'd understand that. Just rotate every other year like they've done before when Star Wars got reintroduced back
Yep.
in 2012, 2015. So I understand that philosophy if they decided to not start with the Mando Grogu and then bring back Ray first, then introduce Mando
Yep.
Grogu and all types of. So I understand that because literally, like my girlfriend and I, we actually watched The Force Awakens.
Oh,
We
nice.
probably watched
Great
it
movie.
once. We watched it in two parts because we had to finish it. She actually liked the movie.
Oh
She
yeah.
It's kind of
hates
hard
Kylo
not to
Ren.
like the movie. There's not much in there that could be
Huh?
like. There's not much in there that's inherently bad. I could say
I
like.
think
I
I
feel like
think
Yeah, yeah.
most
Like I
personally,
said,
people
and you
like
know
the
me,
movie at least.
I think The Force Awakens is probably the best of the three.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But she hates Kylo Ren. She hates
yeah.
Kylo Ren because of what she said when Nick. She nearly. I think she almost got emotional when Han Solo got killed.
Yep.
She wasn't happy, and she said Kylo Ren. There's no bringing him back. There's no redeeming him or whatnot. Now she's in for a surprise as we get to the next couple films. But
Oh no, she might be
and
watching a
I told her,
podcast. We can't
I
say too
told,
much.
I, yeah, so I can't see too much, but I will say that would be part of my Star Wars eventually once we get to those two films. But I could see a fan like her
Yeah.
seeing the last, or excuse me, watching these sequel films and saying, okay, Rey's coming back. I want to see what she's doing. You know, versus because she hasn't watched Mando yet. She hasn't watched
Yep.
Grogu yet.
Oh.
The
So she knows those characters a little bit, but she hasn't watched those series yet.
the
So
big
that's
the
all. I mean,
big
you got to look at that perspective, especially when you introduce
oh
someone into Star Wars.
oh yeah, the big thing with all that, I totally agree with you. Like the people that got introduced to the sequel era stuff, that there is that crowd there. But the
Oh yeah.
the big thing that Lucasfilm and Disney's looking at is like, hey, all they got to do is show the little green guy on screen to millions
Yeah.
of people in a marketing campaign, and like that's I feel like that's something they're capitalizing on. Don't get me wrong, I do wish they would have given you can't really like it's hard to go from like a movie back to the little screen back to a movie, for example. But
Yeah.
I really think they should have done a movie right after season 2.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
that's just me. But anyways,
But yeah, as far as my opening salvo on all this, I mean, obviously, we had talked about this like late last year about how there's rumors of this happening, and
yeah.
we were kind of on the fence of like, yeah, we don't really want this, but if it's announced, of course, we're going to be semi
Oh,
excited for it, and that's my reaction. I was like. Yeah, whatever. It's another Star Wars movie. There we go. It's like a process of elimination. We have 4 Star Wars movies. Hopefully, at least 2 of them gets actually into theaters at some point sooner rather than later after the history of Lucasfilm. But what got me really excited right off the bat is when they said they're shooting this year. So that means that there's a likelihood of this thing coming out perhaps as early as December 2025, next year. I think there's a good chance that this can come out um, because, first of all, I would imagine all the pipeline of the production's already set up because it's probably just going to be like the same sets they use for Mandalorian anyway in California, and they're just going to amp up the budget and different things like that. Maybe have bigger sound stages. I don't know. But usually, production could last a decent amount of time, and then post production's like usually a whole year for a movie. So let's say they finish shooting, they start like maybe in a month or two, they finish by the end of the summer. That would give them enough time to actually get this movie out by 2025. And I feel like that was the big crux for them is, okay, we are not going to have a movie until 2026. Maybe that's not soon enough. Quick, let's boil down season 4 of The Mandalorian into just a movie and we'll get that out instead. Like, I don't know what the rationale is with this whole movie. I mean, yeah, we could discuss that obviously, but I think it's very interesting, very curious. Did they look at season 3 and be like, it didn't land for a lot of people. Maybe we should just put it into movies, or hey, let's just try out something new. I'm very curious. I know Milton. I'm kind of on the same page for a certain degree. It's like, yeah, this started out as a series. I could see ending, but and Ben, as you just said, going to a movie, then going back to a couple series, then back to a movie again. It's kind of like too much whiplash. And then when you're explaining to somebody how to watch the show, you're like, well, you have to watch 2 episodes of this series, then an episode of this spin-off series, then you got to watch this movie. Like, it just gets maybe too much now. Maybe it's too ambitious. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the thing to look out for with all this stuff is like, technically they haven't announced they canceled Mando season 4, so that is something to keep in mind with all this. Like,
they never announced like season 4 to begin with, though, either. Officially.
Well, yeah, they haven't officially announced it. They said, all that was out there was like Favreau said he had like a script or writing for it or whatever. But other than that, like, so like we haven't really like had a full announcement yet for like Mando season 4 being canned and turned into this movie. So it's like, we're assuming that it's probably gonna just be the movie, but there's like rumors and different things out there, and it's going to be interesting because the big tell will be realistically whenever they start shooting, whatever this is, movie, show, whatever, whenever they start working on this Mando project, we'll know whether it's a show or movie, as soon as they start. Like, they'll say, if it is the movie, they'll say starting the shooting of The Mandalorian and Grogu, or if it's Mando season 4, it'll be starting shooting on Mando season 4, blah, blah, blah. Like, that sort of thing. So it's interesting because, the way Mando season 3 ended, you could cut the series at that and then just go right to a movie. So yeah. So it's just kind of a coin toss at the moment. And we'll find out whenever they start shooting is the big tell when we'll find out what's really going on here.
Yeah, Ben. One of the biggest things with season 3 that I got hung up on was just the finality of it, the way it concludes, of the iris out on Grogu, force lifting a frog. The world is good. The galaxy is good. They defeat him off Gideon. They have a nice little plot of land on Navarro. Everything's happily ever after, essentially. It's like, wait, there's no conflict anymore. What the heck is happening? Why is the series ending like it's a series finale, not a season finale? And maybe this is our answer. I think what they wanted to maybe do, Lucasfilm was saying, we have ended things here. Now we can either do season 4 or we can make a movie. And if we make a movie, it's almost like anybody can kind of walk in on the movie and watch it, even if they don't have prior experience with the character, because they might kind of not soft reboot the world, but like a reintroduction of the character, and they'll make references to Moff Gideon and all this stuff. But I think it's kind of a good time to try the movie approach, being the way that season 3 ended, at least.
Oh yeah, it definitely, I think, is a good time to to jump into it and give it a try. And like it'll be really interesting just to see where they go with this movie, because you're gonna have to do kind of like a pseudo introduction, like super quick recap of what's happened in the first 10 minutes of the movie, because like, for all we say about like continuity and things like that, yep, like movies should be standalone. You should be able to watch one movie without having to watch 27,000 other things. Yep. Like that's always my feeling on movies. Like, you can take almost any Star Wars movie for the most part and watch them standalone and get it. Like, you don't need you don't need to watch the other 8 movies, for example, potentially to get it. Like, you can watch Empire and get, good, bad, et cetera, like, that sort of thing. So like, with this movie, I feel like they're gonna do something like that, where it's like the first 10 minutes is like a pseudo catch up to, hey, what you've missed if you haven't watched The Mandalorian the last 5 years.
Hey Ben, I got an idea. They could just do a crawl. They could just do an opening crawl, and guess what?
Oh
It'll
yeah,
be
that's actually true.
Star
They
Wars
could
has had
easily.
that built in since the
Oh
1977
yeah.
first movie. I mean,
Oh yeah,
they
that's a good. I mean,
invented
yeah,
exposition before dialogue. I mean,
yeah. I mean, that's actually a good idea. Just do 3 minutes for all like being like, hey, Moff Gideon, blah blah blah, like
they
Mando and
resecured
Grogu, blah blah.
Mandalore. There's pirates in the galaxy, and there's a looming threat of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Boom, there you go. That's all you need to know. We're gonna jump into an adventure with Mando and Grogu, and they're gonna be working with the New Republic with Carson Teva. Maybe General Hera will be in her ghost ship with Ezra Bridger, and it's gonna be good times. We're gonna jump right in like it's any other Star Wars movie. I think a lot of the times I myself get carried away with this. It's like, oh, the general audience is not going to understand. We're not going to understand. Nobody understood Star Wars when it first came out either. Nobody knew what that was. And guess what? It became the most successful franchise of all time, cinema-wise. So there you go. Switching gears, Milton, let me ask you this. What do you think of the title, Mandalorian and Grogu? Do you like the title? Do you think it's too simple? Do you think it's not descriptive enough? What are your thoughts on the title?
I mean, it's kind of weak, but I mean, maybe they're trying to be simple on purpose.
Yeah,
I mean, I wouldn't even know what to name it, honestly, at this point. It just depends on what the story is. So maybe this is just a working title, just to say,
true.
hey, it kind of like just Star Wars. Like when Star Wars came out, it was Star Wars, and then eventually they changed it. But then when Star Wars 2 came out, they just said Star Wars 2. They didn't say Empire Strikes Back right
Uh,
away. Um,
yeah.
so I don't know. This could be just a working title, and maybe they'll just say, hey, we'll revamp it once we get closer to what we're looking to tell.
Yeah, I think if you look at all the Disney stuff, right, this is no surprise to all of us that go on and on about Star Wars saying, oh, yeah, Ahsoka, but it really should have been some kind of Rebels, cool, unique name because it's more about an ensemble than just Ahsoka. Sabine is a very big part. General Syndulla is a very big part. You got, Book of Boba Fett. That was actually kind of a cool title. I like that title just because it adds a little bit of extra finesse to it. It's not just Boba Fett.
I think the two best titles in the Disney
Yeah.
era were Book of Boba Fett and I mean, even though I don't like the movie at all, is The Last Jedi. Like at least it's unique or something. But
Mm.
like with all these titles, it just to me it just all comes down to marketing.
Oh, yeah.
It's all SEO stuff because
Hmm.
what's easier to put as a hashtag like Kenobi, the Last Jedi Knight of the Old Republic, or Kenobi, like so, those sorts of things. Like I think a lot of this just falls purely on marketing versus creative, or they're like telling maybe like John and Dave and like even Kathy, like the marketing group telling those three individuals like, hey, here's your 6 simple titles to pick from. Pick one, basically like
Yeah.
that sort of
I
thing.
mean, here's the thing, right? You look at the general audience. We always got to talk. We always got to think about the general audience. The grandmothers, the mothers, all dads, everybody out there in the world. It's not a hardcore doing a Star Wars podcast or listening to a Star Wars podcast on a weekly basis. They're gonna be like, oh, did you see about that Mandalorian trailer movie? I'm gonna go see that, right? Like, they're not gonna sit there and try to rack their brain about like the Rangers of the New Republic or something. They're gonna just be like, oh, that's the metal guy in a suit. That's that little baby Yoda. That's the Mandalorian. That's what it's gonna be with the
Well,
Mandalorian movie. That's simply
well,
put,
guys,
duh.
guys, I have a firsthand example of that. So when this news got announced the next day, I get a call from my grandma, and she calls me. All of a sudden she calls me out of nowhere, and I'm like, I wonder why she's calling me. And I hadn't even thought about this news. Like I wasn't expecting her to read online Star Wars news.
Yeah.
Um, and she calls me, and I'm like, hey, what's up? And she's like, hey Ben, did you see they're making a movie about that old Mandalorian guy and that little green guy? I said, yeah, I saw the news. So like, even she saw that, and like,
Oh.
so like people know, like, they know who Baby Yoda is. Like, so like that's gonna be a big thing, and marketing is gonna go crazy when they start doing marketing for this
Ooh.
this movie. Like, you're gonna have the Baby Yoda puppet on every like Good Morning America talk show out there and everything.
Yeah, they can actually talk about a Star Wars project without a strike. Oh my gosh, it's going to be
Yep.
glorious to see everybody out there getting the flowers they deserve out there, promoting everything. Speaking of getting flowers they deserve, how much you want to bet that Pedro Pascal actually, goes on set this time around? He's the bigger money figures now. It's gonna be a
Yep.
movie. I think he's gonna
One
stop what he's doing now, and he's gonna be like, okay, you can at least get me on set for a single day at the very least.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like Pedro is such a big star. He's gonna want his face on the movie screen.
I really hope that this is the movie where he gets over the whole I have to hide my face all the time. This would be
Mhm.
the way to do it. Just have him taking the helmet off repeatedly. Like Bo-Katan's probably going to be in the movie. I would imagine that. You can't have a Mandalorian movie with just a solitary Mandalorian. I mean, you could, but why? You got the whole place is a Mandalore that's all over there. Use more cool looking guys in armor with jetpacks and girls as well. So yeah, I think this is a good opportunity to really have that big moment where Din just comes to the, becomes more open now of all the adventures he's been on. But yeah, at the very least, I just want to see Pedro Pascal in there a little bit more.
Oh yeah. Hopefully so. Like I think he will be on the set and like on camera just because it's to me I feel like Pedro's gotten bigger than bigger than just Star Wars as a star. Like that's why I wish I hope for future Star Wars projects they start to just go back to the original trilogy style, more cast totally unknowns and lock them down for many years.
I mean, Pedro, he definitely wasn't unknown, but it wasn't until Star Wars came out that he like skyrocketed. Because then he was like, "Oh, I'm
Oh
gonna be in The
yeah.
Last of Us," and then that's been the big issue is like the filming conflicts between Last of Us and this, and now there's hubbub going around that he's gonna be in Fantastic Four now, most likely, as if he isn't busy enough, you know?
Yeah. Right.
Ay, ay, ay. But I'm imagining John Favreau is gonna write this script. I mean, this is his baby first and foremost. I can't imagine anybody else writing it. Season three wasn't my favorite written Star Wars anything. I could say that for a long shot. I feel like he needs maybe another draft or more eyes on his scripts sometimes because they're not deep enough, and sometimes there's like problem areas in there. So I really hope I understand he's going to be writing this most like 99% chance, but hopefully since it is a bigger budget, it's a movie, they could do a couple pass throughs of the script before it gets
Yeah.
finalized.
Yeah, I think the thing I would say definitely have to like kind of like maybe asterisk it or remember it for season 3. Like, obviously we don't have any proof and they would never admit it, but I feel like season 3, the reason why it turned out the way it did was like they had to have smashed Rangers of the New Republic into season 3 like to get whatever, storylines they wanted to get taken care of because like, think about like the standalone Coruscant episode or like, just different things like that in season 3 where it's like you could just totally cut this stuff out and like, you don't even need it. Or even like Moff Gideon breaking out. I don't know about you guys, but Moff Gideon breaking out feels like a Rangers of the New Republic type
Yeah.
storyline, like him breaking out and then Carson Teva reporting on
Hmm.
it and blah blah blah, like, all these sorts of things. So like I think that's a big reason why season 3 had its issues. It just to me anyways, it felt like they just had to kind of squish together, Mando season 3 and Rangers and just be like, okay, let's come up with something. And that's why like I don't mind Favreau writing it, especially he has a lot more time now, like, conceivably, before the strikes, after the strikes, etc. Like so like he's obviously been working on this behind the scenes.
Yeah, and the thing is, we got to remember this guy is the guy that kicked off the MCU with Iron Man. I'm not sure if he wrote that script, but he definitely directed the movie, and that spawned the juggernaut that is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're used to seeing him in Star Wars in the capacity of working on TV. Movies are a whole different animal, and maybe that's just where he feels better utilized anyway. Maybe he feels more comfortable making in movies. I don't know. If that's the case, then yeah, I'm excited, and we can't judge shot for shot what he did with season three, just because this is a whole different orchestra essentially working now.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, I guess at this point we could, because there is another story to talk about a little bit after this. But what are your guys' hopes for this movie? I mean, it's anything that goes to the movie screen, it's for me, it's got to be epic. It's got to be climactic. There's got to be space battles. There's got to be some pretty awesome uh, gunfights. Maybe there will be Jedi running around. Who knows? But I'll throw it over to Milton. What would you like out of the first of the two announced, at least, Mandalorian movies?
It better be good. That's all.
Yeah.
Like, I know that's simplistic to say that, but what I mean is, like, it needs to be. You're right. I think our expectations the last, let's say, 3 years when it comes to any Star Wars property has been here. Very like, if it's good, great. If it's bad and we expected it, like that's where our heads have been, because even looking at how Marvel has declined in the last how many years, like where our expectations are here now when it comes to superhero genre or Star Wars. Now we got those ups and downs. We get some hits, but it needs to be back to where it was an event, bro, where like every movie came out for the most part was like, oh my God, you gotta be there. Like
Yep.
oh man, I'm gonna tell 4 or 5 of my people, you gotta go see this joint. Like this movie's fire. So it needs to get back to that point. But again, my expectations are here just because one, I don't like bringing politics into what we do in our podcast, but realistically, I gotta kind of put it in there. Sometimes there are weird hidden agendas in how people make their films now.
Yep.
Whereas political messaging, that type of thing. Let's go back to just telling a good story. Let's go back to just presenting our story. If there is a message in there, tell your story, but if you don't knock it over our heads. I think that turns a lot of people off. And I think with social media now being a thing and how it is, when people see that, they're quick to go to their phone and say, "Hey, this is in this movie. They're trying to prove this point. Don't go see it." You know what I'm saying? So like, let's get away from that message telling. Just tell a story. It's fantasy. It's not real. Get back to telling a story that's got a lot of heart, action, excitement, and it keeps us wanting to come back. Like that's all I care about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, I completely agree with you, Milton. Like, I think with, like you said, a lot of movies nowadays, in my opinion, the quote unquote like nerd movies, like superhero, Star Wars, indie, etc.
Yep.
Like they've taken an undeniable hit over the past 4 to 5 years. Like, you could just see the downward trending even before the pandemic. Marvel was in a really tough spot with like all of its different movies, and like Star Wars was having its weird times. Like, so you have all these different things, these properties taking hits. And also I think as well, when it comes to like these types of movies, like nowadays, in my opinion, I don't think the bar anymore should be like $1 billion or bust, because I don't think that's like, right. I don't think that's even conceivable nowadays.
No more.
Because
it's not feasible.
Because people don't want to go to theaters. So, like,
yeah.
I think when it comes to these movies, it's like if you make them for like 150 million, you need to make back over 300. So like if this movie comes out, and makes like 700 million, 600 million, it's a success. It'll be fine.
Yeah. Here's another thing though too, and I'm Ben. Let me piggyback off that. So like another thing is too about that. I think you're right. Our expectations about box office needs to stop, because again, like a lot of times, look at Marvel. They were building up their genre. They're building up to the big team up movies, which box office would go up because we were invested from Iron Man to Endgame, and we knew where they were projecting it, and so the box office would reflect that. Nowadays, a lot of these franchises don't have enough time to build up their brand. Look at what happened to DC.
Yeah.
Like DC was so impatient, wanted to go from Man of Steel to Justice League right away, when really if they would have taken their time and told good stories to build up to their big team up, we would probably still have a DC EU hitting $1 billion. Now we would have had COVID mixed in, but we still would have had a consistent brand. And Star Wars is kind of in that same boat now, because now they're kind of like, we're building, but we want to still get from point A to point Q real fast. It's like, wait a minute, tell your story. Don't worry about box office, because that tends to affect plans moving down the road when it really shouldn't, unless you're telling a good story. But Ben, I'm gonna let you finish. I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. You're making completely valid points. Like, those things, impact, it's like a domino effect, you know, it just impacts the next thing and the next thing, and it even impacts like indirectly like TV show plans or other, or even heck, even gaming plans or book plans, you know, you know, you never know. Like a lot of this stuff could impact so many branches of Star Wars. So like, you know, like you were saying, I just want it to be like a really, you know, good, fun movie like everybody wants to go back to see, you know, just have a good time with it and be a good first part to these Mando movies coming to theaters, because like in my opinion, like Star Wars can't resist like okay, so we have the Favreau movie and the Filoni movie. Like now you guys can't tell me Star Wars couldn't resist. Like if these two movies do good, I feel like it's just bound to happen. We'll get a third movie because they would love to market the Mandalorian trilogy, you know? Like I think that's something that could be conceivable as well, just because it fits. Like I could see us getting maybe even a third movie if these two do good, just because it's like it has the potential to really, like in my opinion, like to really get us back to that like 2015, 2016, 2017 range of Star Wars, like around Force Awakens or Force Awakens leading into Rogue One hype of like everybody being excited, like feeling like Star Wars is like quote unquote back. Like I really think this movie has that potential. And like you mentioned, Chris, on your point about this movie, John Favreau knows how to set something up to like quote unquote like introduce like the new universe. Like because even though everybody knows Mando and Grogu, you know, they're having to reintroduce Star Wars again to the public audience in movie theaters, and you know, kind of, you know what kind of like point I mean in Milton, kind of like they have to kind of like prove themselves again in theaters. If you get what I'm saying, like you know, they have to prove they can do it in theaters. Like they showed they could do it on TV, but they got to prove they can come out and make something that's like appealing and like wanting people to come back and back again. For this movie, or have good word of mouth at minimum.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's like, all right, we could dominate this other area. As far as what I hope story wise happens in this is, I think they're gonna try to, you know, like we were saying, it's called The Mandalorian and Grogu. I don't expect to be just them. It's not going to be a solitary story. There's got to be enough in here to warrant having the bigger budget to doing all this stuff, right? I think you're gonna have to throw in Grand Admiral Thrawn at some point, and he needs to be brought up as a badder villain, because Ahsoka was just the introduction. There wasn't enough there. So, you know, you look at building up his power level and maybe give him a couple wins along the way. Maybe at the end of this movie, he gets a massive win, and we're left with this cliffhanger. Then we go back into Ahsoka season 2, which we'll talk about in a second here, and it'll carry forward. So I think, yeah, this will be not a compartmentalized story. Maybe it'll start off that way and he'll go get his allies. But, you know, last we left off, he is working for the New Republic as a mercenary under the table, with Carson Tever giving him missions along the way. So I think it's only fair that the number one enemy of the New Republic will end up being Grand Admiral Thrawn. Hence, Mando will have a collision course with that character, and yeah, we'll have other characters pop in along the way.
Well, Chris, that actually brings up an interesting thing I thought of. You know, for example, say if we are talking the Marvel route with John Favreau and all this stuff, or do they go and introduce Thrawn maybe in literally like the final 5 minutes of this movie, or even a post-credit scene, Thanos-esque, like Thanos style?
Yeah, something like that. But I think he could be. He's already showed up a lot in Ahsoka, so I think he would be even more involved than just a post-credit story. It's like, yeah, we already know about him. Let's just put him in the actual movie at this point. But yeah, I mean, regardless of the fact, I am happy that we are getting another Star Wars movie, because that'll equal 4 Star Wars movies. Looking at how this could be run by Lucasfilm, we get this movie hopefully in 2025. Then, like you said, Ben, 2026, what would it be? Or 2026, it would be May?
May. The two dates for the 2 dates for 2026. It's May 2026. I think it's the end of May. It's like May 21 or 24, whatever that like Thursday is. I think is when it is. And then the other one was like December 17, 18, 19. Somewhere in there was the 2026 December movie. So like we have, you know, 2 Star Wars movies for 2026 on the like schedule tentatively from Disney from a few months ago, back in like November. But it's just if they hold those dates, that's a whole another question. But you know, it does bring up the question like, hey, if we do get this movie in May of 26, are they gonna like, you know, do this movie and then go 6 months later and basically give us the quote like the kind of Endgame movie with the Dave Filoni movie like being in December, like just 6 months later, or will they take a year or two to build up the hype?
Nah, they're gonna take a year or two to build up the hype because
Yep.
I mean, you look at Endgame too and Infinity War, right? There was 2 movies I think that came out between them. So they
Yep.
kind of like want to let it simmer for a little bit, and then they'll hit us with the big finale. And this is gonna get right into the next story here, and that is Ahsoka 2 is just confirmed in a footnote within this story that we're reading from. So yes, Dave Filoni has been confirmed to be development or to be currently in development for the Ahsoka series. I can finally breathe now. I can finally let go of all my anxiety of, oh my gosh, they set up all this stuff and nothing's gonna pay off because it will. So I'm really happy with that because that was my big gripe with the finale of season 1 was just why are they setting all this stuff up and it's been months since we've heard anything. What the heck is going on here? I'll throw it over to Milton. How excited are you for season 2 of Ahsoka? Because I'm pretty sure you enjoyed season 1, right?
Yeah, I enjoyed, was it 8 episodes? The first 6. The last 2 were a little up and down,
Mm,
but no, I enjoyed the entire show for the most part. It's pretty solid Star Wars. I couldn't really complain too much, obviously, but I wasn't surprised to hear that we're getting season 2. I think the way they set it up, it appeared that we probably wouldn't have gotten it how it looked, because
mm.
it would have made you think, oh, they're just going to just turn it, just go from this to a movie. But I'm glad we're getting the show. I think it's warranted. I think Rosario Dawson earned the opportunity to get a second season. I think there's so much more Ahsoka stories that can be told with the current storyline, but also the
Hmm.
parallel storyline of her training and still learning from Anakin. Now we know he's a Force ghost. Obviously, he's there, so he's going to have to communicate with her throughout this time. And obviously, how they ended it with them being on that planet. What was it called?
Peridia.
Priodoria? What's it called? The planet?
Iridia.
Peridia? Peridia.
Yep.
So it's like if you're a fan of the Clone Wars, you saw the statues, you know that was the father, I think the son or whatever, and then obviously the bird was there, which was the daughter. So like you know they're going to eventually touch upon that, and obviously how are they going to rework that Ray Stevenson character, which I assume they'll
Yeah.
recast it. That just makes sense. Just recast him, bring in an actor, bring in Liev Schreiber to play him. Done. Um, I'm cool with it. I love it. I think it should be a good show. I think they need to be just more concise on the story because those last 2 episodes were wonky. Overall, I'm excited for this.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting uh, how much of a long tail that the Mandalorian has now branched out into, right? This is the first spin-off series that is getting an additional season, right? We talk about the Book of Boba Fett and how it had a lot of problems, but the fact of the matter is it didn't do well enough for Disney to warrant a green lighting a sequel as much as I wanted it to. So it's pretty neat now looking back and being like, okay, Mandalorian spun off into Ahsoka, which now is its own kind of like miniature franchise since it has multiple seasons at this point. And if we're gonna dive into the Mortis stuff, because there is a post that Filoni put out a couple days ago where he drew one of his famous sketches, and it's Ahsoka and it's Sabine, and they're on the statue, one of those statues that Balin's in front of, like they're just like out there gazing at the sky. So that's a pretty clear indicator that we're probably going to be diving into some heavy Mortis stuff, and they would never have enough time to do that in a movie, or at least it wouldn't be portrayed probably well enough to have the time to do that in a movie, because this is some Force mythology stuff that really deserves to have entire episodes dedicated to it. So for me, I'm very, very thankful, very relieved that the story is not going to just be truncated and squeezed into like some 2 hour movie and feel like it's rushed.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the best thing for this. It's the best thing for the series and for the show, obviously. So.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you guys. Like I think, I was really excited about the announcement. I couldn't believe it, and like you said, it was funny they put it at like the end of the paragraph in that article, but it's nice, and it's nice that they'll continue on the story. They didn't just leave us hanging, because that would have been a really weird way to leave us hanging if they would have done that, done it that way. So you have that to consider, and then of course, like you mentioned, Milton, you have the whole Balin stuff with Ray Stevenson, and I think they're for sure gonna recast him, because like even a couple months ago there was an interview with Filoni with Variety or THR, and he really politically dodged around the question of recasting, or like what he's gonna do, and he was pretty much implying like his story is gonna continue.
Okay.
So like he was kind of like implying that. So it's like I think it's gonna happen. And the thing is with fans, I tweeted this out the other day. I saw someone like post, one of those Star Wars aggregate accounts. They posted like, should Balin be recast? Blah blah blah. And to me, I think like we're at a point with characters, like nowadays, it's so tough because like people like cling on to all these actors that play these characters and like try to like only these actors can be these characters, like so like, and they think these characters should not like move on past the actor, and to me, like at the end of the day, like the actor is just playing the character should continue on if the story demands it,
Right.
and like in this case, like it definitely demands it, because you just leave Balin standing there with statues. Like you can't just like what are we gonna like? I don't like sound cynical about this, but are we gonna get like just like a flash of lightning or something at the beginning of the show and Balin's like poof gone or something? Like we have to continue that story, so it's like they gotta recast him some way or another. Like you said, Lee F. Schreiber, or my big one I would love is Gerard Butler, but I think he's just too big for Star Wars.
Well, no, like, I don't know, because he hasn't really been anything. Like he's done like historic action movies, but he's not really like breaking box office records. He ain't Robert Downey Jr. Like that'd be true. I couldn't see Robert Downey Jr. playing in Star Wars or Leonardo DiCaprio at this point.
But Gerard Butler would be Gerard would be good for that,
right? I think he can pull it off. Well, let me jump in real quick. So like,
yeah,
you made a good point about how if they don't recast it, it's just going to be like a big like, well, what the F? Like, what are we doing with this character? And I've always felt if it's warranted, recast it. Because I look at two examples: Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. I know there was. I love I love Chadwick Boseman. I love T'Challa. Love that character. He's one of my favorite characters. I always joke when I was at my brother's wedding in Vermont, I was wearing that 3-piece suit. I said, bro, I felt like T'Challa because I was looking fly.
Yeah.
But like, I said, looking at that story, that movie suffered because he wasn't recast. Like, and I know
he's one of my favorite characters too.
That movie was not the same without him. And if they would have recasted that character with another prominent Black actor who could have brought some type of energy, like Chadwick, and no one can replace him. But we would have let it. We would have definitely accepted it if they would have said it from day one. Hey, we're going to recast it. Out of respect for the character, out of respect for Chad, this is going to work. I guarantee they would have told a good story. We would have accepted it. Look at example number 2. The Rise of Skywalker suffered because they didn't recast Leia Organa. Because you could tell, looking at those scenes, how they cut that, it's like this doesn't really fit to what it should have been. Because I guarantee
they wrote lines around Carrie's deleted scene.
Around that. Yeah. So like if Carrie Fisher, God rest her soul, was alive, I think we've got a different movie. If we would have gotten a different movie, I truly believe that. But if they would have recasted her with another actress, whether she's an unknown or at least relevant, she could have done a good job at playing that. So I think that movie would have been better if they would have worked around it, because it would have given more flexibility. I'll look at one more example, a movie that didn't suffer because they actually did recast. The Matrix Resurrections, I believe. The Matrix Revolution, when the lady who played the Oracle, she died. She played the Oracle in number 1 and 2. she dies in real life, and then they recast her with another prominent black actress who played that same and it worked out perfectly because they explained it. They said, well, why you look different?
Oh,
Oh, the Matrix, blah blah
no
blah blah.
way.
This is how things work in the Matrix.
Wow.
Organic. I'm like, oh, we're good. I believe it. Like, go back and rewatch that movie. They explain it.
Oh,
So to
shoot.
me, it's warranted if you explain it right, especially in a movie like The Matrix. It works. With Star Wars, you can make that work. We can forgive that because okay, we understand that old boy died. We can't help. We can't. That's real life.
Yeah,
So yeah,
Milton, another thing like with Star Wars fans, we
yeah.
got to remember, like we always
You're
talk
not
about,
gonna cast a boy with no, go ahead.
we always talk about recasting and stuff, and like, you know, people always are debating recasting. Like, don't get me wrong, of course it was like 20 some odd years later in a prequel, but like Obi-Wan was recast, Han Solo was recast, Genevieve O'Reilly, we're all loving her, and she's recast, and she's playing Mon Mothma in
Facts.
this universe, and she was after the
Facts.
woman who played her in Return of the Jedi, and people forget that though.
Facts. Here's
Like,
another one. Here's another one that's recast, and people don't quite understand it, and they love him because he is. Darth Maul was freaking recast by Sam Witwer
Oh, yeah.
with his voice,
yeah,
and no one says nothing because he does such a good job.
yeah.
You know what I'm
I mean,
saying? Hell, he recast the Emperor multiple times in the games and even in the freaking
Oh, yeah.
animation. No one says anything.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like literally we got it in both live action and animation because you watch Solo, you obviously have Ray Park, but that is not Ray or that Peter Serafinovich guy's voice.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's Sam Witwer.
Well, Milton,
Anything.
even
So it
with
works.
those examples, like when it comes to like Ray Stevenson with Balin in this series, like I think they really should recast him though, because it's like his character was so interesting, and like he was arguably out of our, you know, main characters like Ahsoka and Thrawn and people like that, out of the quote unquote new characters, he was the best new character.
Yeah.
And then like you also have the factor of like, don't get me wrong, like his character was amazing and all this stuff and blah 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 blah, but like, and it's not even like being disrespectful, but like his character is not an iconic big character yet. He's not Darth Vader. He's not Luke. He's not those type of characters.
Yeah.
But then
not
you
the
have
same
like
tier.
other franchises, like if you look at like Batman's being recasted countless number of times, while Christian Bale is still around. They go and recast Batman, and you know, with Ben Affleck, or like a Spider-Man. Spider-Man's been recasted countless times, and now we have all three of them on screen together.
Yeah.
So like, you know, you have all these
So, yeah.
characters, or even James Bond.
James Bond.
I remember.
I was literally gonna say.
Yep.
Yeah,
James Bond.
I remember when the Flash, when the Flash show came out
Yeah.
on CW when CW was at its height. Literally, the premiere of the Flash show, they announced the Flash movie
Yep.
with freaking Ezra Miller.
Ezra
And-
instead of Grant Gustin.
Yeah, and Grant Gustin's playing the Flash for like 3 weeks at that point because the show was awesome. And then they announced, oh, we're doing a Flash movie with blah blah. And I remember Stephen Amell came out and he was like, that wasn't cool. They should have at least waited or say, hey, like let Grant play him. However, I enjoy Ezra Miller
Same.
as the Flash. Yeah, he's a little messed up in real life.
Yep.
But people got over it. It's okay. Ezra Miller's the movie version of the Flash. You know what I'm saying? It can happen.
Yeah.
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 Now with you guys, with this show, like setting like the recasting thing aside, so like for me with this show, like I'll let you guys go after I just say my like thing real quick. So like for me with this show, I just want like Ahsoka season 2 to like really carry on the Balin story with the Mortis stuff, like get interesting with it. We already had implications of the world between worlds in season 1. We had you know, those sorts of things, those force entity type things, and especially like what is Balin looking for? Is he looking on how to enter Mortis or whatever, or like, you know, the whole Abeloth thing, or you know, just anything really, like Balin, like continue his character arc. And then of course with Ahsoka season 2, I do think, in my opinion, I think the majority, probably like I would say at least 60% of the screen time probably is going to be taking place in our galaxy versus the other one, because you know, I think it's going to be centered around like Hera and Ezra trying to put together a rescue mission to find Ahsoka, and then you're going to be dealing with Thrawn, Thrawn and the witches, getting their plans around, and eventually, like, I think eventually we're going to get that moment we talked about, guys, at the end of the finale. I think we're eventually going to get that moment where Thrawn announces himself to the galaxy. Like, either it's like a broadcast to Coruscant or broadcast, I think we're going to get something like that, basically, sometime. I mean, it might be the way this season ends, potentially.
I think we're getting that in the Mandalorian movie.
Yep. That's actually
the big thing for the movie. It's like the audiences don't know about the blue guy yet, but they're gonna know about the blue guy when they get out of that movie. They're gonna be like, that guy is the next Sidious or something, right? They're gonna start saying, this is one of the best bads we've ever seen in Star Wars. Like, here we go, let's go. But I mean, as far as like what I expect for Ahsoka is to do what they did in the first season, right? It's a very special show because it deals with the Force, and no other show does that right now. Well, Obi-Wan did that a little bit, but this really gets in the weeds with that, and it's that samurai-esque, right? Every episode basically had like lightsaber dueling going on, so I fully expect that. I want to see what Shin Hati is capable of now that she is part of these bandits. I want to see more of her story because she intrigued me as a character, but they didn't go in as in depth as I would have liked to see. But now here we go. It's season 2. The benefit is we could dive a lot further into that character. So that's what I want. Yeah. And Milton, do you have any last words on the Ahsoka series? Anything you would like out of that as well?
Or like expectations or anything, Milton, or like what you'd like from the story?
It better be fire. That's all I gotta say. Cause I really enjoyed that particular season. Like I said, had some hiccups, but I love that character. And I'm gonna say this because I listened to what was I listening to the other day? Something with Roka said something about that female director making those comments.
Oh yeah.
Okay. About like making men uncomfortable and all that other stuff, blah blah blah. Which it was nonsense. It was nonsensical and bullshit, but whatever. But I love this character, and I think we as men, we do appreciate the female leads and characters in Star Wars. I want to make that very clear. Because I think we get this notion that Star Wars isn't for women and blah blah blah, which is trash. Like Ahsoka's a beloved character. So
I say it all the time. Really Padme is really underrated.
Mm-hmm.
Facts. You know what I'm saying? So like, I like that we're getting another series that's female led, and that's a character that's beloved. Because again, from where she started till now, like, bro, Ahsoka can. Why do you think we get mad when we're like, how is she losing to people? Like, she's that nice. Like, because we're invested. So that's to tell you right there, men ain't weird about this female character. We want her to be successful. You know what I'm saying? Yep. So like, I love the character. I love the show for the most part. I liked it a lot. I hope it continues to improve. I trust Dave Filoni for the most part. So I'm excited. My expectations are for the show to be successful.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Milton, to bring up. That it has been like a kind of trying times for Star Wars fans in the last 2 weeks with all that stuff going on. And like, that's a good point for any of our listeners or viewers on here. Like with Star Wars fans, a lot of like the people that are out there that are like, they're the minority, it's a small, loud minority of the fandom that is saying like stuff about women and things like that. Like, some of our favorite characters for Star Wars are these women. Like, Ahsoka's awesome. Bo-Katan, I'll hold it to this day. Like Bo-Katan's intro into Mando season 2 was so badass. Like her just coming in and whipping those pirates and stuff. Like that was awesome. And like Katie Sackhoff is great.
Listen, and she ain't bad on the eyes either. So
yeah,
like, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly. You have her. You have even, I always say it like, when we talk about like stronger like female leads and female characters in Star Wars, like Padme is one of the most overlooked characters in Star Wars, in my opinion, and her character is great. Like Padme in episode 1 and 2 specifically is, she's such a good character. So it's like, with Ahsoka being like primarily, it is like a female-led show. It's Ahsoka, it's Hera, it's Sabine, but all these characters are fan favorite characters, and like we don't. That's the thing. Like Milton, you bring up like quality so much. we don't complain about it if it's bad quality. Like if it was bad quality with these characters, we would talk about it. But since these characters have been written pretty well, like we enjoy them. Like it's simple as that. It's not like some big conspiracy like about these things.
And that's the thing. And I want to make it very clear. I don't care if it's a man or a woman in the lead of the character. If it's good, I'm gonna like it. If it's trash, I'm gonna let you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like I was just watching Wonder Woman today at the gym when I was on cardio. That first Wonder Woman movie is fire.
It is great.
Oh, you know what I'm saying? If
No Man's Land scene is awesome.
Yeah. If it wasn't good, I'm gonna let you know. It got nothing to do with her being a woman. Because I've watched plenty of. I went to rewatch the Justice League, the Joss Whedon version. Trash.
Oh yeah, that's
ain't got nothing to do with men or women. It's just bad. You know what I'm saying? So if the female leads, if the race stuff was dope in the trilogy sequel or sequel trilogy, I'd be all about it. I'd be like, yeah, great. Got nothing to do with her being a woman. It just ain't well written. It ain't developed for her that well. So I'm just like, all right, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So
I mean, look how we feel about Boba Fett season 1. I mean, we love Tamara Morrison. Like,
we love him, but the way they did his character, they lowered his power level. It's like, what the hell? You know what I'm saying? Like, come on.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, yeah, it's funny how this week went, right? I mean, last week, Ben, I was like, we're gonna get news. We're gonna get news. I said, I feel it. I have an idea. If we're gonna get that Bad Batch trailer, and I don't think anybody had on their bingo card that we were gonna get a Star Wars movie announcement out of the blue on an early in an early January Tuesday, right? It's like, what the heck happened? So, I mean, there's been other reports, or not reports, but there's been rumblings. There's been the creators of Bad Batch saying, "Oh, the trailer's imminent" or whatever. So, I expect I'm going to throw another bold prediction. We're going to get a Bad Batch trailer this upcoming week because there's nothing going on Disney Plus right now. Echo's out and it's amazing. Go watch it, but there's really nothing else that has dates. I think we're about to get hit with 2 weeks of Star Wars news because we've been lacking it for a couple of months. They're just starting off the year.
I think we'll get the Bad Batch trailer sometime in 2024, sometime this year. You never know. You never know with them. Like, because the thing is, I don't know. You know how it is with Star Wars with teasing things. But I do think my hats off goes off to Lucasfilm because like this news was so random. And like I don't like to be like a conspiracy person, be like, oh, they're trying to squash negative talk on the internet or anything. But after all that stuff went down 2 weeks ago, like all the internet was ablaze. Like all the creators, so many fans on Twitter, on X, were fighting, and it's just so much negative buzz around Star Wars. Like, why just drop this news on a random Tuesday? Like, to me, it just feels kind of reactionary. Like they had this in the books. Maybe this could have been announced 2 months from now or something. But maybe they just had this sort of huge news in the books to be like, okay, you know what? Let's just like squash all the talk around that Daisy Ridley movie. Just squash it all completely. Put it out there that like the Mando movie's coming first, et cetera, et cetera. Put out their Ahsoka season 2, and then go from there. Because like it just feels so calculated. Like, why would you have like so much negativity a couple weeks ago, and then all of a sudden all the Star Wars fans online are happy? And I don't know about you guys, like nobody's talking about the controversy from that Daisy Ridley movie anymore. Basically, most people are talking about the Mando movie or Ahsoka season 2 or the Dave Filoni Mando movie. Like, that's all people are focused on now versus this controversy. So like hats off to Lucasfilm if they did decide to pull the trigger and announce it early or something. But it just, like you said initially, Chris, like even unintentionally before I even brought this up, like it was just such weird timing on a random Tuesday. You just dropped this news. Like, to me, I don't know if I had to do the conspiracy theorist, I think they did it on purpose to squash that stuff online.
Yeah, well, I don't know if we'll ever know truly.
Oh no.
there was also another announcement of 6 more episodes of the Young Jedi Adventures coming out, and I know for maybe Milton and maybe Ben, your niece or nephews, whatever.
Yep, my niece,
I know mine, they watch it, my niece and nephews, so they'll be happy. I'm happy because apparently one of the screenshots shows that the lighting ceremony aboard Starlight Beacon. So we are firmly set in phase 1 of the High Republic books at this point. So I'm looking forward to it. I want to see what those characters. You got Lena So, Chancellor of the Republic in animated form. It's pretty neat. So I'll be looking forward to seeing those. I think that last batch of episodes for season 1 heads out to Disney Plus and Disney Junior in February. So yeah, that'll be about it. As for me, you guys can find me here on the channel, obviously. If you're watching and you know where to find me, youtube.com/Starrapter. As I said last week, I started that blog on starrapter.sub. I keep saying subreddit every time I'm going to introduce somebody to where my blog is. It is not subreddit, it is Substack, starrapter.substack.com. I just put up, speaking of the Mandalorian and Grogu, I put up a listing of the 5 characters that should make an appearance in the Mandalorian and Grogu. Check it out. I also have my review of Echo hitting very soon on that blog as well. Milton, it's good to have you back, man. Where can the people find you? I can only guess what you're going to be talking about over the next 48 hours, but hey.
They can find me on Twitter at Milton Weber7 or on Instagram at Milton7Weber. You're right. The next 48 hours, if we win, I'm talking about my Philadelphia Eagles. We played Tampa Bay tomorrow night. If we win, we're going to make a run. If we lose, I wouldn't be shocked because we've been playing like trash the last month. But I'm happy that Dallas got their asses whooped tonight. So I'm good, as you see on my sweater. Freak the Cowboys, bro.
That's great. Where can they find you on social media?
Milton Weber7 on Twitter or Instagram at Milton7Weber. So we're good.
All right, we're good.
Yeah, I mean, that's hopefully the Eagles can win, so one of our teams can continue on this podcast. But yeah, for me, you can find me talking about fitness, talking about Star Wars, talking about the NFL playoffs, and that's about it really on Twitter at RealBenMaynard and Instagram as well. You can find me at RealBenMaynard. Sometimes I just share random fitness stories or just share funny memes on Instagram, so you can follow me there.
All right, so there you have it. You guys could always download the podcast after the fact. Just look up Outer Rim Transmission, Spotify, on Apple, anything like that. But for us here at Outer Rim Transmission, we'll be back live next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, breaking down the latest in Star Wars. It was great to get a good old news episode out to you guys. And otherwise, that's going to do it for Milton, for Ben, for Chris, aka Starrapter. That's going to do it for Outer Rim Transmission, episode 136. Have a safe and pleasant week, everybody. We'll see you next time in transmission.